Business ownership has never been hotter, but how do you do it? That's where I come in. Allow me to guide you on your journey. Welcome to Ion Franchise. This episode sponsored by SEO Samba. Empower your franchise with predictable results and AI-driven marketing. Up next. Yeah, and there's no doubt celebrating your success with a family and people you love is really the ultimate to most people.
And I get to shake their hand and look in their eyes. And I said, when after that shake and look in their eyes, I knew whether or not we were going to get that person. And I should give them those flowers and thank you. I'll make sure I pick it up on the way home tonight.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another fabulous episode of Ion Franchising. I am your host, Lance Graulich. I have a special guest, a friend of mine. He's the host of two podcasts, not one, two amazing podcasts. Carl J. Cox is the host of the Measure Success podcast and $4 Million Strategies. And he's the author of Lost at CEO. And let's see, founder and CEO of 40 Strategy. Carl, that is a lot. And you're not even old. So welcome to the show, my friend.
Lance, thank you so much for having me on.
I don't know how you have time to do all this. Let's start with why the franchise community wants to listen to my friend Carl, the business expert. So give us some highlights of what you've done in your lifetime and what you're doing these days. And I have a whole bunch of questions to surprise you with.
You do. And I am excited to be surprised. And Lance, that's a good question. Why listen? I think one of the things I've been really fortunate with that is I've been in 7 different companies that have gone from at least 2x to 7x in size. So that's as an operator. And so I learned a lot from that practice of being within companies, learning all different phases of the game, from the accounting, the finance, the operations, the strategic planning, the execution, the people management. I've managed every functional department in a company. So I just have enough knowledge. I don't want to claim I'm an expert in all those things, but just have enough knowledge to have some pretty cool stuff gone through. And then I've been really fortunate. I didn't plan to go here, but opened up 40 Strategy, where we help people, give them that knowledge so they can apply it to their business, to their franchise. And so from that perspective, it's I think your listener is going to enjoy this. It's a little bit of contra to what they're used to. And I think they're going to really go, wow, this is something I need to think about and maybe change the way how I'm doing things.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's interesting when we talk about what an expert actually is. To me, an expert is just somebody that has more experience, been there, done that, and you haven't, and you want to get there. How do you measure success in business and in life, Carl J. Cox?
That's awesome because that's like exactly what I asked my guests on the Measure Success podcast, and so it's always fun to have that be flipped around, and so I'll answer it in 2 ways. So in the business side, I think that it's a core function. One is your, I mean, let's be simple about this. Is your company creating positive cash flow? Right? That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, are you serving something of value? And number three, I want to be careful with this, but are you enjoying the process?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And
because
there are a lot of people that don't.
Right. And sometimes, and enjoy is maybe too strong of a word, but for me, for example, I love the challenge, right? I love the challenge of growing something. I love, I'm there's this kind of concept, like a shark, sharks don't like to stop moving or they die, right? And I'm kind of like that. Like I like to keep moving. I like to keep moving forward. So for me, that's success. Like people are saying, oh, I want to spend 2 weeks doing nothing. That's like, pencil and retina right there for me. And so when people say of those things, I just want to be around, relax, like, well, let's not hang out together. That's not what I'm going to enjoy for too long. So, but then on the personal side is as you're going through that pursuit, right? You're going through that pursuit to generate positive cash flow, to hire great employees, to make a difference for those you're serving, and not to lose your wit, along the way, is your personal side taken care of. So what I mean by that is, I'm fortunate. I don't want to make it like every single day of my life with my wife and 4 kids and friends have been perfect, because that would be silly, right? To say that, but I'm fortunate. I'm still married with my high school sweetheart. Have 4 kids that, two have already graduated from college, two are in the college part, and they're getting to pursue their dreams. And what I'm most appreciative of is we all have relationships. Like literally last night, we were all on a Zoom call together. We have one in Annapolis, we've got one in Fort Worth, one in LA, and one local right by where we're at. And we're all on this FaceTime Zoom call and just enjoying each other's company. That to me is success,
Yeah.
right? Is having that type of experience.
Yeah. And there's no doubt celebrating your success with a family and people you love is really the ultimate to most people.
Right. And the freedom, right, to appreciate it. I think you were telling me, and there are some of our discussions that, hey, I need to make sure now at my stage that I'm going once a week somewhere, right? Going having vacation, and that to me is a great measure of success. Is like, do you have the means and the freedom to do it,
Yes.
right? That's I think a great measure of success.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. So, in your book, well, let's talk about this 7 step. So, Lost at CEO, the 7 step captain process to scaling an organization, of course, sustainably and, you know, let's just say effectively and sustainably. How about that?
Yeah, so it's called, the Captain Strategy Method, and it's an acronym, right? So all the different steps. And so we start out with the C, and that is ultimately about, what's your compass? What is your North Star? Where are you trying to go to in the future? And so that's a vision of where you're going to be 3 years, perhaps it's even as long as 10 years out in the future. It's this long-term view of this is what success looks like in the future. And then the A in that is to aspire. I get caught in this sometimes too. And even though it's like, how Carl, can you not be aspiring? I literally was just kicking myself and I'm playing a small game and I could be playing a bigger game. I was like kicking myself literally just from a conversation I had earlier today. I could play bigger. And I think that's one of the problems. We don't aspire. Why the value of aspiring is it helps change our habits.
Yeah.
When we're just going, hey, we're going to just grow 3% this year and, do that. That is so boring. I
You
mean,
won't
that
even
is
keep
like
up
top.
with inflation these days.
You're not even keeping up in inflation. I mean, it's like, you're not keeping up inflation. So that's aspiring. Then you got to build a plan. And it may sound silly, but how are you going to get there? That's a strategic plan. Then we move forward to the part that's the hardest part for the high achievers that I work with. And anybody who's in a franchise is like they're an entrepreneur. They're excited because there's like, oh, I could do this and I could do that. One of the best things that happened during COVID, and you'll appreciate this for anybody who was in the food business. What did we do? We trimmed our menu
Yeah.
to the essential few. You got to do the same thing with planning. Trim down. The Pareto principle plays out here. 20% of your activity typically gets 80% of your profits. How do we do that as much as possible? Eliminate the things we're not creating value. So that's the T.
Yeah.
Then we keep on moving forward of like, okay, so you got it. This is going to be so funny. It's amazing how many plans go back in your little book, bookcase, my bookcase here, and it just collects dust.
Yeah.
Only 20% of organizations start their strategic plan on time. So ACT is that A. And so meaning our strategic plans have a start date, not just an end date. We got to start moving on it. And I like to move this into 10-week sprints, actually, is the process around that. Every quarter I have a 10-week sprint period. The next step is indicators. Okay, so the hardest thing is when you're going out to sea, and anybody's been on a boat beforehand.
Yeah.
It's scary when you get to the point where you can't see land behind you and you can't see the land ahead of you. It's like scary, but there's
Yeah.
buoys. These buoys are the leading indicators. And we need to focus when you're in the middle of the ocean and you're freaking out about, am I going to make it? You got to focus on your leading indicators, meaning the thing you control to get your next outcome. You can control guiding yourself to get to the next buoy, right? to make sure you're going to get your final destination. That's the indicator. And then finally, next, after you've arrived at whatever destination you're trying to get at. And by the way, we talk about destination, not just goals, because
Right.
how many people failed their New Year's resolution?
Yeah.
Okay, well said, right?
Most.
Most. But when you get in an airplane, you expect to get to your destination.
Absolutely.
And so we want to have a mindset that we're going somewhere new. That instead and so that and the next though is one no, not we're going somewhere new, but also we're thinking about, hey, what could we have done better? What did we learn from that process? And then ultimately where are we going next? Lance, I think we may have touched on this beforehand, not in this particular segment, but how many people have quote unquote make it and they go crazy after they've made their millions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of the scariest things. It's one of the almost tragic things of like, I've made my 7, 8, 9 figure that goes into my bank account. And all of a sudden we're like, what do we do next? And so it's so important, whether you've sold your business or whether you're going to the next stage of your business or in your personal life. I remember meeting with one private equity operator, Lance, where he said first of all, he spent a little too long bragging about all the different places and different homes he had and different, I did this, I go here, go airplane, go to charter plane. He's like, cool, okay, congratulations. But what he told me next was the most interesting because he was literally interviewing for a job. And I was like, well, why are you here? And he's like, because if I see another luxury pool, if I'm gonna drown myself in it.
So he finally came back to Earth and realized he has to do something productive.
Gotta have purpose, right? We gotta have purpose. And so that whole step, that whole process is the Captain Strategy method. And what we try to do is, the sad part is when people will come up with plans, they're only 10% successful on average.
Yeah.
We flip the script. So we try to get people to be 90% successful. We can't guarantee 100% success because that's like impossible, but we get organizations to have 3x the success compared to the average or even higher than that. And it's awesome. It's awesome when we walk them through the program. It's hard work, but I got two whiteboards beside me. What's worse is when people think they get on a whiteboard and they have that really nice retreat and they have the really nice wine and they have all the nice stuff with it. And they're like, well, we've got our whiteboard plan. Let's get it done. That is not a plan, folks. That's a whiteboard session. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That
Is it communicated? What are the goals associated with the plan? There's a whole strategy to rolling that out.
That's right. And so that's what we do is we fill in the blanks. We make that whiteboard happen.
So let's talk about metrics. Let's roll right into that. Successful businesses track important stuff. But you told me that there are people not tracking the important stuff. I mean, like if you're a home service brand, you're a roofing company, you're going to track your average transaction. You're going to track your bids, your bidding process. How many bids are you doing in an average day? Because you can easily figure out how many jobs are you actually getting from those bids.
Yes.
And especially in the franchise world, you can then compare and contrast what that rate should be, right, of success compared to other franchisees, and then dial in. I'll never forget when I was a Wingstop franchisee. I had franchisees calling me asking why my labor hours, based on my sales that were similar to theirs, were so much lower. And I said, well, my staff is completely cross-trained. And you might not understand until you see it in action. But why don't you come visit me and watch? And you'll see. I don't just have people making chicken wings or frying chicken wings. And, they're doing different things. They're doing prep. Some might even ring the register at the same time they're assembling orders. You never know. So give us your favorite metrics or how you set up the appropriate metrics that need to be measured. And at the same time, why not share a couple of those metrics that it's like, what's wrong with people? Why are they measuring the wrong things?
So, every business is different, right? So, but you gave some examples like a roofing company, what do you do? And so this is going to sound very contrary, of like, hey, Carl, I thought you said the most important thing is generate cash flow out of business. It is. Don't have anybody fool you anything else. If you don't have cash flow out of business, you are not for profit.
The, the,
Right?
the ultimate,
Or
the ultimate
yeah,
result.
yeah. But that's what we call as a lagging indicator, right? That's the end result of all the activities that we've done. The real important thing is to focus on the leading indicators, meaning the things we can control. When you gave that example of a bid, right? Working on bids and the number of bids, because why are we doing a number of bids? That's something we control. Why? Because we know a certain percentage of those are going to turn into a winning bid, which ultimately we're going to be able to work over. That's a
Yes.
great example of tracking the leading indicators. I'm going to give a small little example just to kind of hit this home a little bit, and it's a different story, but it will resonate. Is
Great.
working with a charter school of all things, okay, not a franchise, right, but a charter school. And the charter school asked them, "What's their most important metric?" And they said, "Well, it's number of students." I said, "Okay, so how do you know you're improving your number of students each year?" So, "Oh, we track the number of students." I was like, "Okay, that's not helping me out, is it?" Let's take another step here. How do you know during the year something has changed? And like, well, we track number of students. And it's like, okay, I got to stop talking to the CFO. Can I talk to somebody else who knows more than numbers? And finally, the superintendent says, so actually, somebody else said, they said, it's number of applications. I said, okay, do you control the number of applications? And they were like, no, we don't really control that. And finally, the superintendent, his eyes like light up and he goes, you know what? You know what it is? It's the campus visit. I said, well, tell me about that. He said, well, when a prospective student comes onto our campus, they see our beautiful facilities. They get to experience our culture. They see our extraordinary teachers. They see our outstanding students. They see our athletic facilities. And at the end of that experience, they come into my office and I get to shake their hand and look in their eyes. And I said, when after that shake and look in their eyes, I knew whether or not we were going to get that person.
Yeah. Of
So I asked them this most important question. So you're tracking your campus visits. What do you think he said, Lance?
course not.
Of course not. Of
He knows
course
the
not. It
number of
wasn't.
students.
He was trying to understand. They weren't tracking this as CRM. They weren't tracking this anywhere. And this is the crazy part. He even later said, he said, you know what, Carl? I've been working on my PhD. I don't even know who's doing the handshaking anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what's interesting is, once again, you got to apply this to your own business, to your own franchise, whatever you're in. But everybody has what we call a campus visit, an
Yes.
experience which leads to the transaction.
Yeah.
And you want to make that leading experience, that campus visit, extraordinary. And when you make an extraordinary campus visit, you create transactions in a great business. And you could do all your work and all your strategies. How do we make that better? Who was on the tour? Who was the student? Were they great? Where was the handshake? Did we follow up with that student after they came on the campus? On and on and on, right?
I
You
love
can
that.
do plan after plan or plan off of the main thing. So
Yeah.
it's important for everyone who's a franchise here owner is, what is your main thing?
Yeah.
And how do we get people, meaning main thing you can control, and how do you get people to convert better through that experience? That is measuring the right metrics.
No, and this is powerful stuff. I want to understand in your head. So let's just say you have a franchise brand that has 50 locations. And maybe they're a very unique niche. They've been doing really well. The franchisor, the parent company is very happy with the results. They have good franchisees. But maybe like the charter school that had success, they weren't tracking much. So
Mm-hmm.
do you, is it a methodology? Is it a strategy to start with analyzing the top performers and really understanding also their difference and their metrics compared to everybody else? Or do you rather just break down the business model and find that, in this case, quote, campus visit?
I think the answer is yes to both of those.
Okay.
Okay, because number one is, yes, I always like to understand what's driving people to the transaction, right? What's creating that? What's getting people in the store? What's getting people to buy your product or service? We need to understand that. And you can flow chart that, right? You can understand, you go through that
Yes.
parcel. But yeah, the most interesting example, you gave an example of it beforehand of Wingstop. Hey, we had different metrics because we wanted flexibility of our staff.
Yeah.
We wanted our staff to be more fulfilled. We wanted our staff to add more value. So when you're comparing this thing, what we were actually getting, we were more effective,
Yeah.
right?
Let,
With what we're
let,
doing.
let me give you another one at Wingstop. Fryer oil. For every 35-pound jug of fryer oil, there was a ratio that we knew for every jug of fryer oil, we should have, $10,000 in sales at a Wingstop, whatever the number actually was. I don't think it was that. And you would know. And then you could check for theft. You can check for cleanliness of the fryers because some restaurants wouldn't clean their fryers as much. So I guess it's the classic inspect what you expect, but you have to understand what to expect.
That's right. Yeah, you do. And it needs to be visible and clear, right? These are the type of things that depending on your organization, whether it's every day, every week, every month, every quarter, we are talking about that quote unquote campus visit all the time, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of metrics that don't matter,
Yeah.
right?
Now
That
it's
just don't matter.
it's funny. A metric that does matter, and I do because we don't want people getting hurt. I see it so many organizations, big and small, that board in the back that's public for all the employees and even visitors to see is relating to workers' comp. We have been accident free for 422 days or crazy, right?
Or our internet has been up 99.9% of the time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
By
So
the way, I did actually have a person fight me on that, keeping that in the strategic plan. And I was like, okay, got a big ego there.
they were the IT person, right?
For an IT person. That's exactly right.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on, let's talk about in the world of franchising, of course, support, as you can imagine, supporting the franchisees, these franchise owners that invested their hard earned money in these businesses. It is vitally important to make sure they're being supported. And, when you're talking about support in general in your book and everywhere, all over the place, supporting your team, in this case, supporting your franchisees. Where do people really go wrong? Do people really intend to be bad bosses and not support their corporate team or intentionally just not support their franchisees? I mean, I just went through an example with a buddy of mine. He left the brand and they just weren't paying attention to franchisees anymore. He didn't even have a visit for months. He didn't have anybody call him for months. He said, unless he needed something, which he always needed something because the business was not doing well, he had a call. He had a call all the time for help. I mean, who does that? I mean, my wife and her mom talk almost every day. There's a support structure in place, right? Isn't that how it's supposed to be in business?
Yeah, yes. I mean, right. It's interesting. I view the world into people, process, and systems. Every business I categorize in those three things. And it's incredible how often we forget about the people side behind it, right? Because there's very few businesses, except for those big server farms where there's like two people running it, in terms of things. But the reality is most things, right, come down to communication with people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And regardless of the systems that we put in place and regardless of the processes that we put in place, is you still, man, the investment, you get this, Lance, you bring on a great manager to a store, right? And they're running that store well. And if you neglect them, think of what loss that is of somebody who, like, they have low turnover in their store and they're doing a great job, but they don't feel the love. They don't feel the love of the owner who's involved with things. They just feel like they're being taken advantage, right? Because the owner's going around and going to Tahiti and Hawaii and I mean, by the way, I don't have any problem with that. But I do if you aren't going back and checking in to
Yeah.
see what can you do to support them so they can be better at what they're at. What can you do to support them and what they need? The good friend of mine, Scott Ballard, who's a coach, and he had this great story. He had 4,200 employees over 40 states throughout the United States. Okay, it was an insurance agency type business, like a franchise type thing. And there was a key support person in his company, support once again, who was getting ready to quit. And he's like, "Why are you getting ready to quit?" He's like, because you don't know why I'm here, do you? He's like, what do you mean? This is like our busy season. We need you. He's like, no, you don't understand why I'm here. And he finally went through one more time. So, well, help me understand. He's like, I'm here because I'm trying to make enough money to pay for my 14-year-old daughter's braces.
Wow.
See, we unfortunately in the game of business, we sometimes get disconnected what really matters to the people who are running the business, our operators.
Yeah.
And the more we can get connected with them and understand what they need, then we can help really be there for them, right? And often it's not about giving them more money, right?
Yeah.
It's about being there for them, understanding for them, and when appropriate, giving them another opportunity to go somewhere else.
Yeah. All those surveys I've seen in the past, as you have, about why employees leave, money is barely in the top five. It number one on the list, from what I recall, is somebody is leaving a person, typically a supervisor, a boss of some kind. Maybe they just work with a bunch of terrible people, but they're leaving because they don't like working with the people or the boss they're with.
That's right. That's
Crazy.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So it's the old classic, pay attention and you won't have to wonder what the heck happened, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's when there's a great and hopefully people don't take advantage of what I'm about to say here, but hopefully they'll understand it properly. But it's a new core, great steel making company, and their concept, they had this belief, and their belief was we're going to hire 5 people, they're going to work like 10, we're going to pay them like 7.
Oof.
But bear with me here, it wasn't all negative. The point was this: is they were making sure that their company was hiring A type players.
Got it. Okay.
They were actually paying them above wages.
Okay.
They were paying better than the market. They were just the A players. What is so important is those A players in your organization, they are worth like 2 regular employees, sometimes
Yes.
3,
Yes.
sometimes 5,
Yeah.
right? And that's what I'm getting at here is understanding who those players are in your organization. Because man, you lose one key, once again, store manager, and they end up leaving, and all of that culture and all that chemistry that they were putting together, they all leave.
Yeah.
And then you have a real mess. All of a sudden, that store is not operating because now you have to bring in a bunch of brand new employees. Right? Ring a bell if you've heard this message, right? Everybody's here. Ring a bell. This has happened to us, right? When we all of a sudden miss the missing ingredient. And it's because why? Forgot to find out that they really cared about is getting braces for their 14-year-old daughter.
Yeah. You see it enough on Undercover Boss. If anybody ever watches that show, I've seen some old shows as well. It seems like that key executive under Undercover Boss that really missed a lot of things that they should have seen. At the end, as they're one-on-one talking to that employee, they learn so much about their family. And maybe they did while they were undercover and in the weird disguise. They've now learned so much about this family and this person's family, and there's a connection. Well, it's sad because why wasn't there that connection before? Obviously,
Right.
not every CEO can have a connection with every individual employee, but somebody in the organization has to make that connection. Otherwise, what happens? That employee goes to find that connection somewhere else, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, good stuff. So let's talk about strategic planning. How often, we were talking about it in your captain methodology, how often should you do a strategic plan? So you want to buy a business, you want to buy a franchise, or you already have a franchise up and running. Talk a little bit about the timing and some best practices and also some common mistakes of strategic planning.
So I'll go back to, I think it's really important to look ahead. Where are you trying to go to? It might be a 10-year horizon. It might be a 5-year horizon. It might be a 3-year horizon, but get that clear idea of the big picture. And I like to create what I like to call 3-year strategic plans.
Good.
3-year strategic plans, the why. When you just do the annual operating plan, which I'm not against, but when you just do the annual operating plan, you don't figure out, hey, what do I have to do in year one to get to year two to get to my year three destination? Right. What major changes do I have to make in our process and our systems and our people to make sure that we can scale, continue to scale in the direction that we want to go to? And so what I like to do is have a 10-year outlook, like, hey, how is the world going to look like as a result of us being in business for 10 years? Right. 3-year plan, but focused on the 1 year of then how are we going to get that done? And so then every year you technically roll forward after you've completed it, you measure how close are we to that original 3-year goal. And then you're in year two, and then you get to year three, and then you reset that 3-year strategic plan. That in my opinion is the best practice. It doesn't take much more effort to think through 3 years, but it's so much more inspiring, right? Than just, hey, what are we going to do this quarter, or what are we going to do this year? It's like, no, I'll give an example. Let's say you did want to expand rapidly your stores, let's say, as an example, right? Your
Mhm.
business. And we can say, oh no, we want to go from 3 to 10 stores, as an example. Great. That's fantastic. But there's a lot of change that has to happen when you all of a sudden go to 10 different locations,
Yeah.
right? And, do you have your financing in place? Do you have the management team in place? Because then all of a sudden you're going to need another probably tier of management, right? To get into there. You're not just going to have the manager of the stores. You're going to have that layer on top of it to help manage
Yeah.
the operations that's taking place, right? Have you thought through that, right? Because uh, even in franchisees, right? It's that second starts the scariest, right? Even if you do have a built-in systems and scale, right? It's like you have to find that way to keep moving forward. So that's what I'm a big proponent of, big fan of. But this is the other part is, as I mentioned earlier, you got to start. And so this is why anybody who's been involved with strategic planning, they do this. If they're good, if they're decent, hey, once a quarter, we're going to meet and check out what happens. Okay. So if you've been a part of this, raise your hand and laugh. Oh, hey, turn it. We have the board meeting coming up. You were going to have to present to the board, present to the owner, and they want to know what you've done this quarter. That night before, they work furiously and act like they've done something for the entire quarter and slop it across their desk,
Yeah.
and nothing really happened. It just is paperwork, right?
Yeah.
That's typically how most strategic plans do. And that's why I like to do these 10-week sprints. You actually thoughtfully think through, is what do we have to do this quarter to get something done every day, a task, not every day, but every week, a task we need to fulfill to get to that objective. And then the difference here is you hold people accountable to that process of actually getting it done each week.
Yeah.
And if they miss a week, they got to catch up. It's a game changer.
So within that 10-week sprint, as you call it, there are smaller goals to get to the ultimate goal. So you have milestones that you have to essentially check off.
That's right. That's exactly right. And it's interesting. I don't make it like a lot of these things that I talk about or got a bunch of books behind for people who aren't watching the YouTube or whatnot. But a great book is a 12-week year, and it talks about this concept of you can get more things done in 12 weeks than most people get done in a year. And I've had the experience. I've practiced it myself. This is why we teach others. The one just small, honestly, difference that we have is I don't believe in all 12 weeks you could be successful because there's holidays and there's a trade show that's going on. You can't be strategic
Yeah.
in those weeks. That's why 10 weeks, typically there's 10 good weeks in a period. Measure, track during those periods, during the weeks that there's something else going on that you can't, it's
I love
people
it.
aren't going to be around. Don't try to set goals on that period. And
Yeah.
hey, if you have a really crazy busy season, like it's a really seasonal business, don't do strategy that period.
Yes.
Do it in your slower periods.
You brought up that's such a good point because some people listening to this is like, Lance, Carl, I get busy. This is a lot of time. And so isn't the idea that when you plan your time, that's part of your strategy, is you have to
Right.
plan all of this in, just like planning to go eat lunch, right?
That's right. Yeah. I'm a huge calendar time blocking freak. And basically if it's on my calendar, I'm not doing it. And the key though thing here is your strategic activity, the stuff that I'd say you don't even like to do as much. Get that done first,
Yeah.
right in the morning, right?
Yeah.
Get it done. And you feel victory when you've
Yeah.
completed that hard strategic activity that you didn't want to get done. That's a big part of what I do. It's funny, yesterday I didn't complete it. And I did. I came home. So once again, I don't want to act like I'm perfect with this stuff, right? I'm tracking my own goals, my own things I'm trying to do. And I literally felt like crap when I came home that day. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I did not get done the most important thing I got. I was busy.
You
Lance, I
didn't get
worked 10
flowers
hours
for your
yesterday.
wife? Is that what you failed at?
Okay, that is unfair. That's unfair, Lance. And I should be getting those flowers. And thank you. I'll make sure I pick it up on the way home tonight.
All right. Well, so and then as far as just common mistakes with strategic planning, not planning, rushing through the process. Any final thoughts on that before the next question?
Engage your team who's going to be involved with it.
Got it.
Okay. That is a big miss. I
Yeah.
go back to the whiteboard again, the whiteboard session. You have your few key people, or maybe even several people or 10 people that are involved in it. They're like, hey, where's it gonna be amazing? We got it all figured out. 51%, Gallup tells us 51% of managers actively try to sabotage your strategic plans. Okay.
Because the
But why?
assumption is more work for them ahead of them, or what?
Yeah, yeah. So two things. One is they aren't a part of the how to get there. You want to have them be a part of the how. That's number one. Number two is, are we giving them time to actually get it done? And then three, do they have incentive to get it done? Is this going to make their life better?
Yeah.
When we get those three things in place, you're much more likely to get the strategic job taken care of.
I love that. Great stuff. So, in your world, it's really about process improvement, strategy, just overall business health, business improvement. What do you say? There were a lot of people that went through COVID, like, oh, woe is me, it's COVID. Yeah, it's something new, something terrible. But there was a lot of businesses suffered. Some did not. And there were a lot of people like, woe is me, it's COVID. There was COVID. A lot of people are now talking, well, it's kind of a recessionary time. There's a lot of inflation. People don't have money. People have high credit card debt. My business sucks right now. What can I do? So, what do you say to those folks? I would imagine, I would hope somebody would hire you when they're in their darkest day there and need to get their business fixed and adjusted. But I also fear if they're that far gone, it's an attitude thing. But what do you see in getting businesses to the next level?
Well, that's I didn't mention. About half of my work is turnarounds.
Ah,
And so, half of my work is with the really happy, successful, hey, we're just trying to get the next level, and it's kind of a party the whole time, right? While there's the other group of people where it's like this, they have problems, like significant problems.
yeah,
And I've been in a lot of them. I've been in a lot of these crisis situations. I get hired by private equity firms to turn firms around. And the cool thing, right, is in actually every single one of them, we've been able to turn it around. And regardless of the economy, regardless of COVID, regardless of dog ate my homework, right? There's always an excuse.
yeah,
And I'm not saying it's easy, right? But it can get done. And so that's a lot of what I do is I help give people that get stuck. We get so stuck, right, in our paradigm. And that's one
yes,
of the things I've been very fortunate with is those seven different companies I went from 2X to 7X couldn't have been more different. They're completely different organizations.
yeah,
Companies that I work with, massive variety of organizations. It goes back to there's fundamentals of every business. The key is learning for your business and for your people and for your process and for your systems what's not working. And often, at Lance, I'll say this, often they know,
yes.
but they're
I love that.
unwilling to do anything about it. They
I,
often know.
I love the simplicity of how you just said that. because in a franchise business, the smartest executives are in touch with franchisees. And I was president of the Franchise Advisory Council for Wingstop. So clearly we were the eyes and ears, and we surveyed franchisees that were struggling to understand, what it was they were struggling with. And it could be something as simple as something's wrong with the packaging and they're breaking boxes and weird things that would go on. But the bottom line is we would communicate to corporate what the problems were. And then, in fact, we would even prioritize what those problems were. And they would get them fixed, and it worked. And Wingstop became an amazing brand. Wingstop was not an amazing brand when I first joined it. So I love that you're simplifying the fact, what's not working.
That's right. That's
But
right.
but the
Yeah.
problem is there are organizations that are not working, and there's nobody there. There's nobody in that captain's chair, so to speak, really calling the shots that's thinking like you. What do you do if you're a franchise owner of a brand and you think it sucks? I guess you got to find that captain that's going to do something about it, right?
It's fascinating why we're called 40 strategy is because only 2% of time is typically spent on strategy, which is about equivalent to 40 hours per year. The really fascinating part is you can get that new guide to your ship. So it's guiding in the right direction. It typically in just 40 hours of effort. Now, I'm not saying there isn't actions and I'm saying as a consolidated organization, like that's what it takes to understand and that's what it takes to manage the strategic change. It's amazing the changes in innovation can happen. And when we help consult and help people to get through and when appropriate, get in deeper, right, with an organization of like, hey, there's some heavy stuff here we have to get through. And yeah, we have new people. Perhaps we need a person you have not been willing to make a change with, and that's the reason why things aren't working, right? Because
Yeah.
you've tried everything and it's like it's not working. Or um, I love that example. Hey, the boxes aren't working, but you haven't said anything, right?
Yeah.
And it's holding up the entire organization because we are 3 times as long at being able to get product in and out of whatever it might be,
Yeah.
whatever the problem might be, right? Um, but almost everything's solvable. And
Yeah.
and then there's going to be the people though. Now there was a Carl Evan. COVID was not solvable. Okay, I started this business in January of 2020, and I didn't have a client in my local area. All right, and I flourished in COVID.
Yeah.
One of my biggest bonuses, and it's not something I brag about, was right after 2008 in the recession, and I was the quietest bonus recipient at that in my blog. Like I was. My point is that you can be successful in any time period, and I would argue it's the only really true measure of success is when you're beating when you're not supposed to be winning. It's
Yeah.
as this classic could say, all boats rise, right? When the tide's rising. But who is around when the tide goes out?
Yeah.
That is when it's fun. And yes, there are challenges, and yes, there's inflation, and yes, I need to get my $5 meal back in McDonald's back, right? There's some really legitimate challenges out there, but there's a few of them that have figured it out.
Yeah.
And that's the difference is are you going to figure it out or are you just going to complain about it and get less money, get less value? That's
Yeah.
unacceptable.
Yeah. No, great stuff. Carl, you've been awesome. So, final thoughts, final tips, or words of wisdom for business owners or for aspiring business owners. And I guess I should throw in there another final thought from me. So, if you're looking to pick out a franchise and you have the Carl J. Cox brain going on, wondering, how do I identify a great, well-oiled machine that I want to join? Not like Wingstop when I first joined, because it wasn't a well-oiled machine. It was an emerging brand that was trying to find itself. I represent a lot of phenomenal brands that have already found themselves. So, do you ask questions like, how often do you do your strategic plan? Carl J. Cox would like to know. So, answer that, weave that into your response if you would, please.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I haven't been asked it in that specific way. I think it's really important to know who you are. And one of the many things we do here is I'm actually a Gallup certified strengths coach, and we do a lot of these Gallup Strengths Finder assessments with our team. And it's so powerful when you know who you are. Are you a builder? Are you a people person? Are you task driven? Are you a high achiever? Are you strategic? Are you futuristic? What drives you? And then you should get yourself in a situation that you're going to be able to use your strengths. The data is so amazing. You're 6 times more likely to love your job, love your work when you're focused on your strengths. And you're 3 times more likely to having a better quality of life at home. So where I was going at with that is I think it's really important to self-reflect and have something independently with data-based information, figure out who you are, and then recognize, hey, okay, there's certain or perhaps it might be the classic vision operator model, right? Hey, I'm going to be the visionary behind this, but I better get an operator because I'm not that, right?
Yeah.
I think it's so important to understand your strengths and then use those strengths to help build that franchise rather than thinking that you could do the stuff you hate, because you're gonna have to take a nap every day or take
Yeah.
too much caffeine or other stimulants to get things going. And it's not good, folks. It is not good.
Yeah.
A gift, Lance, I would like to end with for your guest here.
Yes.
First of all, this has been super fun. You've asked great questions. I really mean that.
Thank you, Carl.
Um, is anybody who's interested, I don't do this very often, but if they want a signed copy of my book, if
Oh, love it.
I'm going to give my email out here. I don't do that very often, but here it is. All right. Carl J. Cox is my personal email, CarlJCox at 40strategy.com. Carl J. Cox at 40strategy.com. Say I was on Lance's show and I would like to get my free book. And my only request is after I send you the book, I'd be more than happy to chat if you want. Don't need to. I'd love to hear your comments on it. I'm just going to ask you to buy the 99% ebook that's on Amazon and do an Amazon review. That's it. That is the only work, but I'll give you a free full copy of it and signed, and it'd be my honor to send that to you.
I think that is fair. I have the book. It is awesome, and you are awesome, my friend. Thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your wisdom.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
See you soon.
If you're ready to talk about franchise opportunities, hit the link below to schedule a call. My services are free, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for listening.